Okay, you're good to go.
Good afternoon and welcome to the meeting of the Seattle Planning Commission. On behalf of the Commission, we'd like to actively recognize that we are on Indigenous land, the traditional and current territories of the Coast Salish people who have lived on and stewarded these lands since the beginning of time and continue to do so today. We acknowledge the role that traditional Western-centric planning practices have played in harming and attempting to erase Native communities. We commit to identifying racist practices and strive to center restorative land stewardship rather than unsustainable and extractive use of the land. So again, welcome. We are happy to make all commission meetings open to the public. Indeed, we are required to do so. But please note the Planning Commission does not hold public hearings because the Commission is an advisory body. We provide recommendations to elected leaders who in turn make the actual decisions. We encourage individuals and organizations to provide their comments appropriately to elected officials. Today's meeting is a hybrid with some participating remotely, while others are in person in the boards and commissions room at City Hall. I'd like now to address our color brave space norms, and I would like to invite a commissioner to choose and briefly speak to one of those norms that they feel might have particular relevance to today's agenda, wherein we are getting an update on the accessory dwelling unit and other housing strategies and talking about the transportation levy. If no one volunteers, I will choose someone. Thanks, Rose.
Hey.
Hey.
Okay. So let's see. A little flustered because I wasn't expecting to be able to make it today because of field work, but I think that a good one for today is probably, honestly, they're all good, but let's go with look for learning and commit to learning in public, both because of where my headspace is today, and then also just because I think it's a good practice for all of us on the commission is to be open to not always being right and being open to feedback, and then also to avoid playing the devil's advocate. So the subtext of that is avoid playing the devil's advocate that upholds white dominant power structures. There we go.
Thank you, Rose. That was gracious and graceful, and I appreciate your taking that assignment. On the agenda today, we have two items: a briefing on the accessory dwelling unit, detached accessory dwelling unit report by staff from the Office of Planning and Community Development, and we have an update provided by our staff on the Seattle Transportation Levy. Our first job, though, is to approve minutes from the June 13th meeting. I would ask for a motion and a second to approve the minutes before we entertain any changes or amendments. Can I get a motion?
Rick moves.
Thanks, Rick.
Nick seconds.
Thanks, Nick. Are there any changes or amendments to the minutes? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Opposed? And any abstentions? Right. Minutes are approved. So our next full commission meeting is scheduled for Thursday, August 8th from 3 to 5:30. That meeting will be a hybrid format with options for meeting in person in the boards and commissions room at City Hall or online using the Teams platform. And our next Land Use and Transportation Committee is next Thursday, July 18th from 7:30 to 9 a.m. and will be held online via Teams. So as noted before, this is a hybrid meeting. I'm going to review the format of the meeting. This is for me or for you, Vanessa? I'm sorry, this is for you. I would like to hand it over to our able and oh so excellent Executive Director, Vanessa Murdoch.
Thank you very much, David.
So as noted before, this is a hybrid meeting being held both in person and via MS Teams. During the meeting, there will be opportunities for commissioners to ask questions and provide comment. Please put your name in the chat to be recognized by the chair to speak. This is for commissioners. Please do not put substantive comments in the chat as members of the public do not have access to the chat. We do have public comment both right now or following right now, as well as at the end of the meeting. However, I have not received any public comment. I would ask my colleagues, John and or Olivia, to check in with the member of the public who is in the city's boards and commissions room right now and ask if they care to provide public comment. We will happy to give them the opportunity to do so actually after the commissioner introductions or at the end of the meeting. Before I do that, I do have a few announcements to make. I would like to invite our new Get Engaged Commissioner, Matt Malloy, to introduce himself. Matt will be appointed in September, along with his cohort of Get Engaged board and commissioner members across the city. He proactively reached out and said, can I come to the meeting? And of course you can come to the meeting, as all meetings are open to the public, and we're very excited to bring you on board, Matt. So I want to give you a minute or so to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Vanessa. My name's Matt Malloy. I use he, him pronouns. And like Vanessa said, I'm the tentative Get Engaged member for this commission. I wanted to introduce myself more formally to you all in advance because I'm so excited to get to work with y'all in the coming months. I live in Green Lake and I work at the Queen Anne Beer Hall. If you haven't been, you should definitely check it out, as well as substitute teach at Billings Middle School in North Seattle. I also am working on my master's in teaching online. My priority is to help plan a vibrant city that working class people can afford and children feel safe to travel and play in. Please feel free to connect with me in the weeks leading up to my September appointment. I gave Vanessa my email, or we can schedule a time to grab coffee or something. Looking forward to meeting y'all in person someday. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matt, and thank you for joining us. Hopefully the next time you join, there will be more commissioners in the room. Today is just a bit of an odd bod day. With that, I'd like to let everybody know that that City Council, the Land Use Committee of City Council, will be considering new appointments to the Planning Commission at next Wednesday's Land Use Committee. That is at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The candidates who will be considered by the committee were recommended by the selection committee and are Zio Alvarez, who is our current Get Engaged member, Cecilia Black, Dylan Glasecki, and Dylan Stevenson. Those 4 individuals will be considered for appointment at the Land Use Committee, as I mentioned, next Wednesday, and the recommendations from that committee will be forwarded to the full Seattle Council meeting the following Tuesday, which is the 23rd. And my last comment, or my last announcement, as we are bringing new commissioners on, that does mean that we are saying farewell to some existing commissioners. We never say goodbye, we say farewell. And I would like to take a moment to recognize David Goldberg, Julio Sanchez, and Rick Moeller. They are each at the end of their second full 3-year term and together represent over 22 years of service to the people of Seattle and our city elected officials. The value and legacy of the Seattle Planning Commission lies within its membership. And I want to sincerely thank David, Julio, and Rick for their committed and passionate service. And we will miss you very much. And with that, I will turn it over to David to start introductions. After introducing yourself, please call on a fellow commissioner or ask me to identify one, because I know our meeting is a bit glitchy. It's hard to see who's on the call and who isn't. And then we will conclude with staff introducing themselves. So David, please go ahead.
Thanks, Vanessa. we appreciate the kind words. And I have to say it has been quite a privilege and truly stimulating and enjoyable to be in the company of all these big brains and fun personalities, and having an opportunity to contribute to a really robust discussion about the city and its future. I'm David Goldberg, he, him pronouns. I live in the Wallingford Urban Center. I think that's what we're calling it now, or will be. And I'm the co-chair of the commission, and this is my last meeting. And so I'd like to pass it on to Michaela Daffern, who will continue to be a chair, but not a co-chair until somebody else comes along.
Thank you, David and Rick and Julio. We are going to greatly miss all of you. It has been such a joy and a pleasure to co-chair the commission with David over the past year. And I'd say that I joined the commission in part because of all of the amazing work that you did, that was done under your collective tenure at the commission. And your voices will be greatly missed. And I only hope that we can carry your interests forward in our future discussions and channel what would Rick say, what would David say, what would Julio say at the appropriate moments. Anyway, sorry, I digress. We're doing introductions. My name is Michaela Daffern. I use she, her pronouns. I live in Capitol Hill and I work in affordable housing policy and planning. And I will pass it to Andy.
Hi, I'm Andy Dannenberg, he, him, live in Northeast Seattle, and I teach part-time at the University of Washington, both in public health and urban planning. I can't keep track very well of who's next. Matt, maybe.
I'm Matt Hutchins. I use he, him pronouns. There'll be another Matt on this commission soon. Two Matts, two Dylans. Let's see. I'm an architect. I live in West Seattle, and I'm going to pass it to Rick.
Thanks, Matt. Hi, all. I'm Rick Moeller. I use he, him pronouns. Like David and Julio, this is my last commission meeting. I will not bore you with all that the commission has meant to me over the last 6 years. I'll do that a little later at the subsequent event. I live between Wallingford and Green Lake. I am an architect, professor, and chair of the Department of Architecture at the University of Washington, and I will pass it to Rose.
Hey folks, I'm Rose Lucello-Whitson, pronouns they, them. I live up in Licton Springs and I work as a professional wetland scientist and environmental permitting specialist with Jacobs Engineering. I will pass to Zio.
Oh, hi, that works, right? Zio Alvarez, she, they pronouns. I live in White Center, Highland Park, and I'm a designer at a firm downtown. Nick?
Hi everyone, Nick Whipple. I use he, him pronouns. I live in West Seattle in the North Delridge neighborhood, and I'm a city planner for my day job. How about Julio?
Hello everyone, Julio Sanchez here, he, him as pronouns when in Seattle, residing in the Capitol Hill area. And I working as a consultant. And I'm just gonna take a minute to say, I was thinking about actually about when I started in the commission, and I think it's closer to 8 years ago because I did the beginning of a incomplete term. And if we think about it, wow, 8 years ago, forest fires, they were not a yearly occurrence. Global warming was still debatable. There were no assured yearly heat waves in Seattle, and displacement was a problem. Things have changed, others have not. But I can count on my fellow commissioners to keep doing the work, and I know that you all can count on the amazing support that the staff of the Planning Commission has provided, is providing, I will provide to present and future commissioners. And for that, I live with a sense of peace because I know that the work is in good hands.
Thank you so
And
much.
I'm going to let Vanessa designate the next person to speak.
Thank you for your kind words, Julio. I think the next commissioner up to introduce themselves is Diana.
Good afternoon. My name is Diana Quintanar. I use she, her pronouns. I live in Capitol Hill, and for my day job, I'm a multimodal transportation planner. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. I'm just going to jump in and introduce a planning commissioner who is joining us via phone. Jamie Strobel, she uses she, her pronouns. She is currently in Minneapolis, but joining via phone. She works in climate change and environmental justice and community activism and engagement. She lives in the future 130th Station Area Urban Village. And with that, we'll shift over to staff introductions and I will hand it over to John.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm John Hoy. I'm staff to the Planning Commission here in City Hall. I use he, him pronouns. And Olivia.
Thanks, John. Hey, everyone. Olivia Baker. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm staff. Back to you, Vanessa.
Thanks, Olivia. My name is Vanessa Murdoch. I use she, her pronouns. I am the Executive Director of the Planning Commission. And I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I see we have 5 attendees, members of the public. Apologies for running a little bit behind. We are hopefully overcoming some technical difficulties. So with that, I will turn it back to David.
All right, thanks, Vanessa. Next up, we have a briefing from Office of Planning and Community Development on the ADU and DADU report. And I'll let you all introduce yourselves as you speak. I don't know who's going first.
Hi, everyone. I'm Philip Carnell. I'm Planning and Equity Data Analyst, they, them, and I am located in the long-range planning portion of the Office of Planning and Community Development.
Hey everyone, I'm Rawan Hassan. I'm a land use planner at the Land Use Policy Division at OPCD, and I go by she, her.
Okay, and is Jeff here? Or who's going to kick it off for you all? It's your floor.
I think I'm gonna kick it off, but I need Philip to share screen, right?
Okie dokie. Olivia, I'm gonna try and take over from you if that's all right.
Yep, go for it. You should be able to. Let me know if you have a hard time.
Okie dokie. Can somebody confirm for me whether or not you can see my screen?
We got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, they got it. Oh, no, I got it. So thank you everybody for coming. So today me and Philip, we will brief you on the 2023 ADU annual report. This report provides comprehensive analysis on the ADU's development in Seattle, explore trends, regulatory impacts, and future directions. Next slide, please. ADUs are secondary dwelling units situated within residential zones. They offer flexible living spaces and contribute to diverse housing options. They are either integrated within or connected to a principal unit, like suites, like within or attached to a main house, or dwellings atop garages, or they can be detached, and in this case, they'll be standalone structures like cottages in backyards. Next slide. ADUs, they are usually used either as condominiums when they are sold to a new owner. A growing number of ADUs are becoming condominiums. In 2022, they were 44% of ADUs, and they are sold in average as like their average selling price is $750K compared to a principal dwelling units that are sold as 1.18 million and 1.6 million for new detached homes, or they are used as long-term rentals. In 2022 survey that we had for ADU owners and occupants, approximately a third of owners rent their ADUs, and 1 of 8 of them made these available for free for a friend or a family member. Or they are used as short-term rentals, and in this case, they need to receive a business license, a short-term rental business license. And it's worth to mention that short-term rentals operators are generally limited to operating 2 units. So the share of ADUs that are used as short-term renters is unlikely to grow as much or at all. And they represent 10% of the total ADUs and 15% of the overall short-term rentals business license are ADUs. Next slide, please. In mid-1990s, attached ADUs became allowed in Seattle. In 2010, detached ones become allowed. However, a small percentage of single-family lots in the cities feature ADUs. In 2015, City Council adopted a resolution to facilitate an increase in ADU production. And in 2019, an ADU reforms happened, which allowed for 2 ADUs in neighborhood residential zones, removed regulatory barriers, eased the complex permitting process, and led to launching AD Universe, which introduced the pre-approved ADU plans. And since then, an annual ADU reporting, like the one we're briefing right now, became required. And all of these reforms have facilitated a significant increase in ADU production since. I'll pass it to Philip.
So in keeping in line with like regulations and production, it's also really important to look at the current planning context that's occurring both at the state, county, and local level. In particular, we have regulations from the state and updates to the King County countywide planning policies that are impacting both ADUs as well as other middle housing options. So new state laws that came out of the 2023-2024 sessions include HB 1110, which will allow greater middle housing opportunities across most neighborhoods throughout the state, and House Bill 1337, which requires cities to have more uniform ADU requirements. An example, 1337 will require Seattle to allow 2 ADUs across most residential zones, whereas today we allow 2 just in neighborhood residential and then 1 in others. King County countywide planning policies also call to further incorporate ADUs both into our planning as well as into our implementation strategies and lowering the cost of housing. They suggest implementation strategies such as incentives to lower the cost of ADUs so that they can be developed more frequently. Both of these changes impact the One Seattle Plan update, which is the local comprehensive plan that the Planning Commission submitted a letter on recently. And as part of this plan, of course, the city will allow for 4 to 6 units on all residential lots, rather than just the 1 or 2 ADUs plus a principal dwelling unit that are currently allowed in neighborhood residential. These will both assist in the housing supply, diversity, and affordability of the city as we move forward. Looking into ADU development trends that happened through 2023, we're going to look more now at some of the results of the report that we're putting out. And the key one is that ADU permits continue to remain high. If we look at the chart on the right, what we see is that in 2018, which was the last 4 years or the last full year before the reforms, if we compare 2018 to 2023, we see that permits issued remain around 4 times higher today. There was, however, a slight decline in new applications for ADU permits. This is like the first indication that the city receives that a property owner would like to eventually develop an ADU on their property. It's like our first intake, basically. And they declined from 1,004 applications to 780. In the report, you will find that we kind of look at several different reasons, including things like higher interest rates for lending, cost inflation, and also holding off potentially for new permitting or new regulations as they come into effect with the One Seattle Plan. Furthermore, we're kind of looking at the co-location of ADUs. This is something that has increasingly become more common, and we're now seeing that 47% of ADUs are permitted on a site with 2 ADUs on that site. So this would, as I said before, occur primarily in the neighborhood residential zones. And lastly, one of the big trends that we're seeing as well is that folks are still continuing to use the pre-approved DADU plans, and around 13% of the 511 DADUs, so around 67 in all, last year really utilized those pre-approved plans. These continue to have their benefits to households and developers, lowering costs by lowering those permit times from 130 days to around 80 days, with also fewer correction cycles that need to take place on average between the developer or homeowner and the city. Next, we'll look at the geography of ADUs, and I'll start with the map here on the right. And what we're looking at here is in teal circles and in squares. Those are going to be where ADUs were permitted in 2023 throughout the city, whereas the gray dots and little squares are where permits were for ADUs were given before 2023. And a couple of years ago, we would have started to see neighborhoods, adding a couple of ADUs here and there. But now what we're seeing really is that throughout a lot of neighborhood residential areas in the neighborhood or in the city, we are seeing ADUs being permitted. In fact, about 87% of ADUs were permitted in neighborhood residential in 2023. And at this rate, ADUs are now also permitting or out permitting single family residential units 2 to 1 in the city of Seattle. In addition, 70% of new single-family residences are permitted with one or more ADUs on site, which of course can be 2 attached ADUs or 1 attached and 1 detached as well. Next, looking at the average size, what we're seeing is that the median lot size is slightly larger on lots where ADUs are permitted. In particular, this is true for DADUs, suggesting there might be a spatial disadvantage on smaller lots for really producing those detached ADUs. As a final finding, what we've got here is that we included a census tract level of the displacement risk index version of the displacement risk index, and we continue to find that ADUs are more frequently being permitted in neighborhoods with lower displacement risk. And as our last slide before we can kind of open it up to questions, we're looking at future considerations, and this one is looking at ongoing and future work for the Department of Constructions and Inspections, as well as the Office of Planning and Community Development. And one major piece that is ongoing is the updating of pre-approved DADU plans. As the building code changes every 3 years to meet new standards, these DADU plans will also need to be updated. Otherwise, they are no longer considered pre-approved by DCI. And with that, SDCI is conducting designer outreach. So if we have any designers in the room right here that have got ones approved, check your emails. They might be coming out. They might have already come out to y'all. And once they are updated by the designers and then pre-approved again, they'll be good until the next building code update 3 years from now. Finally, looking at comprehensive plan and zoning. Due to those factors that I discussed earlier with the market, we are already starting to see the ADU permits decrease a little bit. In particular, we're getting some of those early indications from applications. In the future, we may see ADU permits decrease further as developers and folks switch to new forms of housing that will be, in particular, middle housing that will be allowed once new zoning is adopted in neighborhood residential. However, OPCD does have the intention to preserve ADUs as an option, even as those new middle housing options become available in our zones. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen. Or actually, Olivia, I think last time you told me to continue sharing my screen.
If you don't mind keeping it up, it just keeps the stream going for folks online, and that way also if commissioners have questions, they can go back.
Got it. Okay. I will reshare again.
Back to you, David.
Okay, I guess we are open for some discussion. Invite Rick and Matt to join in early on here since they have deep knowledge and understanding. But we can queue up for any questions we have. Thank you for those of you who are populating the queue now. We don't seem to be having a problem, knock wood, with the technology. So if people want to be on camera when they're speaking, I think we can get away with it. I say with some trepidation. Let's see. Rick, why don't we let you kick it off since your name was invoked in the chat as all this was going on, and then we'll go to the remainder of the queue.
Sure. I just have one quick question. Thank you both for the presentation and the update. There's a fair amount of good news here. I was curious about the early data point that 44% of ADUs were condos in 2022. And what I was wondering, is that the number that were developed in 2022, or is that the number of total ADUs in the city?
I can speak to that, and that is discussing the number of ADUs permitted in 2022
Okay.
that were condos.
Okay,
So
it's
what we're
specific to
seeing
20,
kind
got
of,
it.
yes, yeah.
You have any, do you have a sense of what percentage the condominiums represent in terms of total ADUs in the city currently? I'd be curious, I'd be curious to know what that is.
I don't have that off of the top of my head. However, I could use the table this comes from to actually calculate that. So the answer would be that we can definitely figure that one out. And in general, basically, it gets a little fuzzy once we get into recent years because we find out that they're condominiums and that they're being sold off from the assessor. So there's a little bit of a lag.
Right, because that all happens with the county. City's not really
Exactly.
involved in that process.
So I would probably say, you know, up to a certain point, we can know and we can relatively say, hey, this is the overall percentage. And we do look at it based on whether or not they're attached or detached as well.
Yeah. And I do appreciate the cost information as well. I mean, it's demonstrating that not only is it providing 3 opportunities for home ownership as opposed to 1, but it is demonstrating that these are home ownership opportunities that are available at a lower price point than everything else. So that's all good. Thanks.
Okay, to the top of the queue then, Michaela.
Okay, I'm surprised Matt didn't want to say anything.
Well, he'll get his licks in later, I imagine.
Okay. Thank you so much for this presentation. I really appreciate OPCD's continued commitment to data transparency and doing follow-up monitoring on the programs and the code changes that you make to see what's working and what's not. I, like Rick, thought the cost information was so fascinating, and that 44% statistics for condominiums really stood out to me as well. I sit in the affordable housing space, so I'm always thinking about how we bring affordable homeownership opportunities to people, and I think that information is evidence that ADUs in this market are sort of priced at kind of what townhomes go for approximately. And so while it's a middle income, middle housing solution, it's really not meeting that affordability need without additional subsidy. So really appreciate that level of detail. Took a bunch of screenshots and shared them with my colleagues because I think, you know, this is information and data that we're all hungry for. I also work in the space of trying to work with jurisdictions to help them and motivate them to make regulatory changes and remove barriers in pursuit of building more housing across the county. And, you know, I think a lot of folks are really deflated that, you know, planning is just really not the tool to get us towards solving our affordable housing crisis. But my perspective is that every little bit helps. And I think one of the things this presentation does a great job of is showing that regulatory changes and market conditions working together can drive a significant change in the amount of production of housing if you work towards tailored solutions that actually remove the barriers and address the needs. And so that other chart of the uptick after 2019 was also really cool. So I'm sure folks have gripes and criticisms and whatnot, but just from my perspective, really appreciate this update.
Thanks, Michaela. Zio, you had a question?
Yeah, I think my question's ties into or similar to Rick's. I was just wondering if you have a sense of any patterns or if it's possible to better understand like how the kind of 3 categories you described at the beginning for how ADUs are used like map across the city. So if there's sort of this widespread ADU development, are there certain areas where more of them are condos and more of them are versus short-term rentals versus long-term rentals?
That's a really great question. So we do when we release the report as well too, we will have a condominium map that will show the percentage of ADUs being developed in 2022 by, I believe, census tract that are condominiums. However, we haven't explored the option of doing the other types. I'll make note that the 2022 ADU survey of owners was a sample as well too. So there's fewer there that we would know, that's in particular where we get the long-term rental. However, we do have the short-term rental data kind of up to date through the business licenses.
Yeah, so we'd be interested to see.
Okay, Nick?
Great, thanks Rowan and Philip for this update. I was able to attend a similar presentation. I think Nick Welch put it on back in October, and he had shared kind of another interesting data point from the report related to the survey that you just spoke about, Philip. And one of the interesting pieces I found there were ADU owners are predominantly, according to the survey results, white and have a household income above 200,000 and paid for the construction of those ADUs with cash, according to that report. I'm curious, are there any financial incentives that OPCD is looking at or assistance programs specifically for low-income households or homeowners to be able to build ADUs, or any kind of permitting processes and fees that could be improved to help facilitate construction of these units in those lower income household brackets?
They're working on that.
Okay.
Thank you, Rico.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, didn't see who was talking. Okay, thank you, Rico. Didn't know you were on the call.
We are working on that, and we just OH and OPCD just received a $5 million grant, which I know that Philip was also very involved in, which I think will help us start to set up a program. I'm also in communication with a couple of the hashtag van life developers that do like really nice mobile solutions toward housing, that we want to take a look at the code to see like if we can prescribe, the proper tie downs that meet code and whatnot, whether we can offer up solutions to long-term legacy homeowners that's basically a very straightforward design, build, install solution for them to have an ADU, or I'm sorry, a DADU in their backyard at a low threshold of like time and cost. So very much on the radar. There's a bunch of work that we need to do to kind of lay the groundwork, and it'll be a part of our anti-displacement. There's an anti-displacement report that we're going to be doing that has 3 sections. One, that's kind of the audit of what are the things that the city is doing. 2, what are the couple of new programs that are coming online, including this one, this Pro HUD one. And then 3, what are things that are in the R&D phase. And so this mobile ADU, mobile in air quotes, ADU piece will be one of those. And we know we need to update the AD Universe website based on current state or recent state legislation as well. So between that and comp plan, you'll see some changes coming.
Great, thanks, Rico. Next, we have a question from Andy.
Hi, two quick questions. One is, I see you have the pre-approved for the detached ADUs, and that makes a lot of sense and sounds like it helps. Is there anything useful you could do for attached ADUs, or is it just so variable there's really nothing you could pre-approve on them?
I think it's too variable.
Okay. That's what
yeah.
The other quick question is setting rents, that many of the people with ADUs may not be landlords otherwise, they're just adding one to their existing house. What guidance do the new landlord who's never done it before have for setting rents? So they have easy access to a database to know what's in the area? Are they guessing? Do they just chat with a few folks? Or is there a way to help them decide what's an appropriate rent?
There used to be an independent third-party database resource for rent, which was, I believe, associated with the University of Washington, which is no longer being developed. So I don't know what that answer is now. The city looked into it. Gosh, I want to say that was a year and a half ago, and found that A, it was cost prohibitive, and B, it was going to be hard to enforce compliance. So we stepped away from it as well. So there's not a database resource right now.
Okay, and well, I guess, is it an issue that people are struggling to find the right level because they don't necessarily have much experience in setting rents?
That's a good question. I can't answer.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Next, we have some observations from Matt.
Yeah, hey, yeah, this is great. I look forward to these reports like Christmas. These are great. It's so wonderful that we're gathering all this information. I wanted to quick answer Andy's point. It's unsophisticated mom and pop homeowners that build the ADUs and then rent them out are they're generally not sophisticated, so they don't know what the rents are. So they generally are much lower than anything on the market. So that's so mom and pop landlords' ignorance of market rates actually leads to them being more relatively affordable. It's not surprising to me that 44% of these DADUs are condominiums. We have this kind of wrinkle in Washington code that allows them to be to basically fill a niche that nothing else does. So these are our starter homes. It's really the only opportunity for home ownership that most people have because they come in much lower than most townhouses as well. So I think that's great. My only concern is in the upcoming changes in the comprehensive plan that we really do maintain the carve-outs that allow ADUs to sort of outcompete other forms of housing. So that means that they shouldn't count towards density limits, and we should maintain abilities for them to be sort of exceptions. So not count towards MHA, et cetera, because if they're really being produced at a rate of 2 to 1 to new houses, we need to preserve this niche with everything we can because otherwise it's really there isn't much space elsewhere. So and then happy to talk about these things with any other commissioner that is curious about the workings of these as it is a big component of my livelihood.
Yeah, Matt, I think that our intent is to maintain that carve out. There's a little wrinkle that I'm not 100% clear on regarding at time of permit, the relationship of someone that brings you can bring two projects that look identical to each other. One that says it's an ADU DADU project, and the other that says we're just adding 2 units to this existing site with a home on it. And I don't know if they will be treated differently or not. I think the direction that we are headed is that they won't be, and that's going to simplify everything. So for whatever it's worth, our intent is to make certain that there's not a negative impact to the ADU DADU program.
Cool.
Great. Was that it, Matt?
Yeah.
Okay, back to you, Rick.
Thanks, David. Thanks for joining us, Rico.
Sorry, I couldn't join sooner.
So back to I'm actually one of those uninformed, unsophisticated mom and pop ADU owners who generally rents below market. I do it knowingly, and part of it is because when you get a good tenant in there, I want to incentivize them to stay. So I think we're usually probably 5 to 10% below market on our unit. But I had two questions. One was with the success of the pre-approved DADU plans, I'm assuming there's some discussions about expanding that concept. For example, having a pre-approved plan for a principal dwelling and 2 ADUs that developers might use to develop these eventually condominiumized units that could also then be a step toward maybe pre-approved plans for small-scale multifamily units. This could not only reduce costs and increase production, but it can also help to control design quality at the same time. So I'm curious if there's any discussions about that. And then finally, Rico, you made mention of a recent anti-displacement report, which tweaked my interest and others, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little more about that.
Sure. So on the first point, I have raised the issue with staff that with the passage of the comp plan, that we're going to need to do an update to the ADU universe that does take into account, the additional options that we're affording folks because of the plan. And I think that what you outlined makes a lot of sense. And so do expect to see more on that front. Related to the anti-displacement strategy, the short version is that in this evolving political and financial universe that we live in, I have received direction from the mayor's office that we are going to be requested or required to do a more comprehensive audit of our existing programs, our existing anti-displacement programs, so we can provide some metrics for what are the programs, how long have they been in existence, how many families are they touching, what's the return on investment of those programs, and it makes my heart die a little, but it will be an important part of us continuing to invest in those programs. In addition, there will be 2 other parts of the report. One that talks about new stuff that we're bringing online, and then a third part that talks about some what I will otherwise call R&D stuff that we are working on. I think that that's going to take us a year, honestly, to get through all of that. We'll have to figure out what we signal to community when we release the final EIS and the final plan draft from the mayor's office in December. But I'm actually excited about the new programs and the R&D stuff, and we can talk more about that offline later. I will tell you that, like, what I am interested in is with neighborhood centers, that in the same way we did a request for ideas competition for office to residential. I want to do a request for ideas competition for neighborhood centers and invite everyone that was a part of the Connected Communities pilot draft legislation. And with that, I have a 4 o'clock that I have to jump into. But
Thanks,
you
Rico.
guys know,
Yeah, thank you, Rico. Thanks for joining
Thanks,
us. We
Rico.
really appreciate it.
you guys know where to find
Thanks, Rico.
Thank you, Rico.
me.
Michaela, I guess your question or comments were for Rico. Okay.
Yes.
Does anyone else have questions or comments about the DADU report and associated issues? Rick, do you want to opine on urban hamlets and neighborhood centers?
No, I just wanted to bring it back to everyone's memory where that kind of got started. No, I'm looking forward to the neighborhood center concept, given that I am within the radius of one, and I think it's a great idea. We need more, I think, than we're going to get, but hopefully we'll get there.
I'm a little concerned about Rico's heart, but we can talk about that a little bit later. All right, then. I think we're ready to move on to our next topic, which the wonderful and capable and eloquent John Hoy is going to help us get an understanding of what is in the upcoming transportation levy proposal.
That's quite an introduction.
I think, thank you so much, Rowan, and I think Philip may have already jumped, but thank you for that. That was really great. We much appreciated. Oh, there he is.
Thank you.
Hi.
Thank you for
Thank you
having
both.
us.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, y'all. Have a good one.
Thank you both.
Okay, John, can you take it away?
Sure. Is there a tee up, or am I just jumping right in?
The tee up was, do you want me to introduce you again as the
No, that's okay. Thanks. I'm having
capable and eloquent John Hoy?
I'll cut you off. That's overly generous. Thank you. Okay, so this was meant to be really brief, just about 15 minutes, just as intended to be a follow-up to the June Land Use and Transportation Committee discussion, where I did provide a kind of status check on the development of the Seattle Transportation Levy proposal. And there were a few follow-up questions at that committee meeting. So I have a few answers to those. And I also just wanted to kind of bring everyone up to speed on how what has happened since then and the development of the final proposal. So Olivia, you have my slides. So just as a brief background, if you all remember, we had a presentation from SDOT back in May on the mayor's transportation levy proposal. And just as a reminder, that's an 8-year, $1.45 billion levy proposal to fund safety and maintenance. Just as a reminder, it would cost the owner of a median value home $16 more per month than the current levy. And at that time, that proposal was teed up and sent to the city council. And so the process moved forward as expected. So next slide. Just as a reminder to show you the different categories of that $1.45 billion proposal, you'll see the 3 biggest buckets of investment are in street maintenance and modernization, bridges and structures, and Vision Zero school and neighborhood safety, with several other smaller categories making up the remainder. Each of those did eventually get tweaked. I encourage you all to dig into the details as you're interested now that the levy has been finalized, but I'll give you a little bit of a sense of what happened with the original proposal. So next slide. Just as a reminder, the proposal did go to a city council select committee, and council member Rob Saka, who is the chair of the transportation committee, became the chair of that select committee and shepherded the proposal through several select committee meetings where individual council members added their own amendments, and there was a lot of negotiation, and the process wrapped up at the beginning of this month. So I'm just going to give you a few highlights. So next slide, Olivia. Just as a pause, there were a few questions at the LUT meeting that I did want to follow up on. I was able to reach out to City Council Central staff. Calvin Chow is their transportation expert on a few questions that were asked at the LUT meeting. The hairiest was, what percentage of annual property tax for the median household would the levy represent? He sent me this information, which basically tells you that the average assessed value for a house in Seattle, the property tax bill is $7,278, and that includes all state, county, city, school, and port levies. And the city's portion of that is approximately $2,236. So just as reference, the expiring levy, the Move Seattle levy, is $300. The mayor's proposal, the $1.45 billion, would be $469, so a bump of $169. But then the chair's amendment, that's what was eventually adopted, that increased the size of the levy by 100 million to 1.55 billion. And so the anticipated annual property tax bill as a result of that would be approximately $499 is the information that he sent me, or approximately 7% of annual taxes. Next slide. A couple other questions from that LUT meeting. What percentage of the levy is for sidewalks and other multimodal infrastructure rather than cars? He responded with, as proposed by the mayor, 423 million is proposed for street maintenance and modernization, and that includes paving programs. And there's also 221 million for bridges and structures, which support all modes. Of course, things have changed, and there's been a lot of shuffling around, and it's all very transparent. So I can send out the final details for you all to dig into. Next slide. Has the levy ever failed? And if not, has it been a close vote? There have been 2 levies to date. The first one was in 2006, and that one passed with approximately 53% of the vote. And then the second one, the current Move Seattle levy, passed in 2015 with 59% of the vote. So hopefully that information is helpful. To follow up from my LUT discussion a few weeks ago. And then just briefly, I'm going to go into what has happened at the City Council Select Committee. All of this is now finalized, and so you'll be able to see it. The chair, Rob Saka, submitted a revised package, as I mentioned, that bumped it up to $1.55 billion. And it basically incorporated a lot of various other council member proposals, and I'm sure a lot of negotiations behind the scenes to make sure that people's requests were included. And so he forwarded this package to basically balance and streamline the process. And you'll see it has a lot of additions, it has some reductions, it has to various line items, and it's almost every category was affected in one way or another. There's one more slide. So there were enough changes to trickle over onto another slide. So you'll see that there are various categories. I don't need to read all this for you. This was intended just to be for information purposes, and I can send this out with a link to the final levy after today's meeting. Go ahead, Olivia, next slide. So I do want to just highlight a couple other amendments that were approved during the process. At that July 2nd City Council Select meeting, Councilmember Tammy Morales had an amendment to restore something that was proposed to be cut, and it's called the Neighborhood Initiated Safety Partnership Program. And I did want to highlight this. I thought it would be of interest to the commission. This would restore $14 million to the Neighborhood Initiated Safety Partnership Program that was proposed to be cut in the chair's proposal. It would build up to 16 neighborhood initiated and co-created projects focusing on community priorities across all council districts with an emphasis on equity. This would include safety and mobility enhancements, new sidewalks, crossings, and transit access. So that she really fought for that to be restored, and it was approved, and so will now be in the final levy package. And then lastly, at the city council just earlier this week, Councilmember Strauss did forward an amendment that did not pass last week, but he did forward it again, and that was to complete the Burke-Gilman Trail missing link, and that would add 20 million for completing the Burke-Gilman Trail along Northwest Market Street and Northwest Leary Avenue. He was able to get that passed earlier this week in full council. And so with his one amendment this week, the final levy package was passed at that $1.55 billion level and will appear for you all to vote on on the November ballot. And I have one more slide just to give you a summary of some of the highlights of what is in that final package. It will include 350 new blocks of sidewalks, 34,000 repairs to existing sidewalks, 160 projects to improve bus trip reliability and connect people to light rail stations while prioritizing safety, reliability, and accessibility. New preventative bridge maintenance program and planning for longer term replacements. 15 paving projects to maintain and modernize Seattle streets and get people and goods where they need to go. And improvements to Seattle's bicycle network with new protected bike lanes, added bike lane barriers, regular bike lane sweeping, completing the gap in the Burke-Gilman Trail that I mentioned, and more bike facilities in South Seattle. The mayor signed the legislation, I believe, yesterday and issued a press release. I can forward on all that information if for those of you who want to know more, especially as you plan to vote on it in November. So this was not really meant to be a discussion. I'm just reporting the facts basically, but if anyone does have comments, I think we do have a few minutes for comments.
There we go. I'll unmute and then I'll talk. Thanks very much.
Zio has David, Zio's here in the room and she said she has a clarifying question.
Go, Zio.
Sorry, David. Is the amendment 6, the 14 million added, is that included in the 25 million total for that project, or is that a different, are they called similar things?
So if everyone did not hear, the question was, is the 14 million that was in Councilmember Morales's amendment, was that part of the 25 million for that program? My understanding is that that program that was in the mayor's proposal was reduced in the chair's package. So she proposed an amendment to restore that 14 million, to bring it up either to the original amount or closer to the original amount. Back to you, David.
Okay, any other questions or comments on the levy proposal? All right, I don't hear any. Thank you very much for that, John. I appreciate that. There were a few twists and turns along the way over the multiple meetings, but as you said, it was a fairly transparent process, and it seems like a comprehensive proposal at this point. At this time, I'd like to ask if there's anyone in the room who would like to offer comment.
Nope.
No? All right. If so, Vanessa, is there anything else we need to take up before we adjourn?
Thank you, David. No, I don't think anything else. Just thank you for chairing this meeting, and thank you for your service and that of Rick and Julio, both of whom are on the call. So again, this isn't goodbye. This is see you somewhere else. So thank you both. Thank you all.
Thanks. It's been a blast. All right, with that,
thank you.
We are adjourned.